How's it going out there, world? I had an idea to make a pretty short video today about how to demystify the fretboard. This is kind of geared toward, you know, sort of beginning guitar players. A lot of you advanced guys and girls out there will kind of not really need this information. However, if you feel like intimidated about, oh my god, what are all these notes, like what do I do? There are some things that we can keep in mind to not feel so, you know, overwhelmed, I suppose would be the word. So, one thing I've always noticed, you know, even from being a little kid, was guitar was basically always the most intimidating instrument. You know, when comparing it to, you know, in music class as a little kid, we would get to go to the music room and sit down at the keyboards. No one really felt threatened by a keyboard, and, you know, over the last few weeks I would always kind of wonder what's so, you know, scary about the guitar. And the answer is nothing. There's nothing scary about it. The difference is that, you know, you can't cleanly walk up to it and just get a pretty note on your first day. That's one reason that people, you know, that might be you on your first day, you don't know, like, it's just, you know, it's just, you need practice, basically. But when it comes down to it, it's very similar things. If you could kind of consider each string fret combo as a key on the piano, and if you could play it the same kind of way, obviously those are just random notes, then, you know, obviously there's a lot of the sort of, you know, fear factor, I guess, is gone right away when you keep that in mind specifically. And there's other things to think about. On piano or keyboard, you know, you can play all white keys and get away with it. You know, basically whatever you do will sound sort of musically coherent. You can kind of translate that over to guitar. I don't recommend doing this as a long-term, you know, strategy for, you know, for playing, but if you want to just get past the overwhelming feeling that you get when you try to play, one thing to think about is that if you can stick on the dots, on the dotted frets, if you can stick on the dotted frets, that's basically the same thing as playing all white keys on the piano. And if you do that, you're not going to hit a bunk note. There are, you know, limitations to that. You need to do this staying above the B string. If you try to move all the way down to the B string doing that, it's not really going to work. And there's a solution, obviously, and that's lies within the pentatonic scales, you know, how to get the B string worked in there. But basically, if you can stay above the B string and on this half of the 12th fret, if you can do that, you're not going to hit a wrong note. And the reason is basically because it's going to be major. You're going to be in the major, in whatever key you're in, it's going to be that key major no matter what you play. Even if you don't register that while you're playing, don't worry about it. Keep that in the back of your head when you're trying to improvise a solo, or maybe you're trying to write a song. You can stay on the dots, Some guitars don't have the dot up here on the first fret, but there should be a dot. I always believe when I see one without a dot up here. I like guitars with the dot here. Okay, so now if you wanted to get on this half of the 12th fret, you can still do that, but you got to remember the 12th fret isn't technically, I mean, I don't really see that as a dot there. It's just a marker. I mean, it's there, but what it means is pretend it's an open string. That's not really a fretted string when you use the 12th fret, excuse me. I mean, just by technicalities, you need a fret to do that, but it's the same thing as an open. So, if you want to play above the 12th fret, start it over. You don't want to go like this with it though. That 12th fret dot, you know, we don't really need to think of that when we're kind of using this method for playing. It's an open string. It's the same note. So that's a great way to avoid hitting foul notes when you're just kind of noodling it, you know, and you're still exploring and cruising around on the guitar, you know. It's a great way to avoid foul notes. So that was one thing that I kind of realized lately, is that, you know, we don't have to be intimidated by all these crazy options we have on the guitar, you know. I mean, it's just, we need to, when we kind of simplify it and reduce it down to what's actually happening, it's not that bad. So keep that in the back of your head. And, you know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this aspect, but if you wanted to play on the non-marked frets, just play whole step, you know, whole step intervals, which would be, in most cases, you would skip the half step, so it wouldn't be, it would just kind of go. You're going to be playing in minor keys most of the time, but doing that. I would suggest using the dots and sticking with major. Sonically, that's what people cannot help but enjoy hearing. It's a weird trick of physics, honestly. So, you know, go ahead and keep that in mind when you're starting out learning the fretboard. It's a good thing to realize. Also, if you're not familiar with, you know, other elements of guitar theory, I'm just going to tell you a couple things right off the get-go here. E, A, D, G, B, E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is how you refer to the different strings on your guitar. Yes, there are other tunings that it wouldn't be E, A, D, G, B, E, but standard tuning is just that. For some reason, I was taught every alligator does good books every day. I don't even know, you know, why that makes sense, but it works for me. Every alligator does good books every day. It's how you can remember which strings. And, you know, if you want to get into a very basic approach to learning the notes on the fretboard, we can basically just think of the alphabet. So open, A, one whole step, B, another half step, you're going to get to the C. Now, notice you're on a dot, right? So A, B, C, another dot, D, another dot, E, half step, F, another whole step, so F, G, and guess what? We're going back to a dot again. So guess what it's going to be? A. So you kind of just, it's the alphabet. It only goes up to G. So A through G is the alphabet, and it's basically whole steps. There are, you know, obviously exceptions to that. You're not going to be able to just go 2 frets forever, you know. It's not going to work. But that's how we identify what notes we're playing, basically. Each note is identified via a letter of the alphabet. And yes, there are sharps and flats, but it's the alphabet, you guys. So E, F, G, A, B, you know, and it goes on and on. So don't be scared. G, 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 right? So, you know, it's not going to be in this video. We're not going to talk about every single note on the fretboard today, but keep that in mind that it's not like there's a freaking C right here and then like a Q down here. You know, everything on this guitar is one of 7 things, give or take sharps and flats. Those 7 things are notes, A through G. So keep that in mind, and don't worry about it if you don't learn it all today. But, you know, use those little tricks to kind of make sure that we can avoid playing some foul or bunk notes on the guitar, and that will help you out tremendously if you don't really know if you don't know what you're doing. Just think about that kind of a thing. So yeah, think about that. And also, if you do want to use the B string and beyond, you're gonna have to make, you know, one minor adjustment. You're gonna have to basically just start over when you get to the B string. You're not gonna be able to go. You might be able to go. You can do the same thing using dots, but only if you're kind of beginning your phrase on the B string. You don't want to throw the B string into the middle of your playing. It's just the way the guitar is strung, you know. The B is kind of like a wild card. It's kind of a wild card string. After playing for a while, you understand why it's like that. It's because so you can do like you know, embellishments and suspensions, you know, chording. It helps a lot with chording. Soloing, it always screws me up too, guys. I'm not gonna even lie, but you know, that B string will kind of get in the way of your crazy good flow. But once you train yourself to not just abuse the B string, it does become really fun, you know, would be the word to start using. And you can crawl down to the high E string if you start things on the B string. It'll still work. It'll still work. It'll still work. So keep that kind of stuff in mind. And one other thing that I'm going to mention for people who don't know this already, many people already do know this. The octave. The octave is my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things about the guitar. It's the same note. Same note. And all you're gonna have to do is just skip a string and look 2 frets ahead. That's your octave. An octave is the same note but at a higher pitch, basically, or a lower pitch, depending on, you know, which direction we're traveling. So that's useful for, like, let's say you got a song that goes like D, G, you want to rip a solo over that, and so you're like, oh crap, where do I start my solo? Well, here's a D note. Now, like, do I want to do my solo on the rock and roll strings, the top 3 strings? Oh, I messed that. That was not very clean, but the idea is, you know, if you know you want to solo basically in the key of D, it's good to know where the octave of D is because it's right here. So now you can start your solo here now. That's basically why knowing where the octaves are so critical, because you could also take that idea and find the D string or the D note here as well. Now where's the octave there? So right here. So now you can start doing like absolute shredding stuff up here if you wanted to. If you wanted to work out like a shred line, you can do that because now you know where to find the D note, and you know, spend some times with scales, patterns, things like that if you really want to get into it. And now you'll be able to shred anywhere. And that's kind of comes from knowing what we're doing on the guitar. So think about octaves. Again, the B string, it's not the same thing. You're not going to be able to do, like, that is not the octave of this. Not the same, but this is. So shift up 1/2 step to make this apply to the B string. So, you know, when we're noodling around and we don't know exactly what's going on the fretboard yet because we're new or we've never studied it, keep those 3 or 4 things in mind, and your playing is going to sound a lot nicer.